Hi everyone, welcome to a brand new episode of the Genre Equality Podcast. I'm Hidzir,
I'm Isa.
and this month we are rejoined by a rather regular contributor to the Genre Equality channel. His name is Christopher Falk. He has been on the Genre Equality Podcast, our flagship show, and also our other spin-off show, Behold. Introduce yourself, Chris.
Hi guys, my name is Christopher. Glad to be here. I'm from Matter Theatrics, a collective of theatre artists based here in Singapore.
Nice. That's so awesome. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with Chris and all that. Chris, welcome back. How does it feel to be back on our podcast?
Oh, pretty great. Love the new stuff that I've been watching these few
That's
days.
That's awesome, man. Always happy to recommend to our guest podcast host and also to all of you if you haven't seen any of the topics here. We'll try to keep it spoiler light, but of course we are here to review the month that was in sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. There's a lot to talk about. Our major topics is actually What We Do in the Shadows season 2, the television spin-off of Taika Waititi's vampire mockumentary. We'll also be talking about The Vast of Night, which is an indie feature on Amazon Studios.
Mhm.
I know it's not getting a lot of press out there. Nobody's really talking about it at all, but I did want to highlight it because it was one of my favorite discoveries of the month. And beyond that, there's a lot of other stuff also. Legends of Tomorrow, Kipo, and Age of Wonder Beasts, Penny Dreadful's spin-off show, etc., etc. lah. But let's begin with, I think, one of our favorites of the month. It is the second season of What We Do in the Shadows.
What a hoot!
What a hoot! What a superb owl! It is, as we as we mentioned, it's based off Taika Waititi's mockumentary. Charmingly low stakes, deadpan horror comedy about a quartet of vampire housemates getting on each other's nerves in Staten Island. Thankfully, season 2 remains a silly delight. What let's begin with our guest first. What do you think about the second season of What We Do in the Shadows, Chris?
I'm glad you said quartet because if you said trio, then I would forget about Colin Robinson all over again.
Man, Colin Robinson is kind of the MVP of the show, in my opinion.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is. He is.
Yeah.
He every like this second season, like what he brings to the table is just above and beyond. I thought after season one's one episode introduction to the emotional vampire, was it?
Yep. Yeah. Energy vampire.
And no, he's an energy vampire. She was an
Oh yeah.
emotional vampire. So after that there was just nothing else to go on in terms of building him up in terms of his powers or his capabilities. But we were so wrong this season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I really did enjoy this particular season. I did think the the escalation for each episode did uh, did feel a bit sometimes a bit one note
Mm-hmm.
because I could kind of track where the story was going, but there
Mm-hmm.
were other episodes where just right off the bat, within the first 5 minutes, you just go like, "Huh, that's not the premise of today's episode." I mean, like that's what do you do with the introduction with Guillermo in the beginning for what, and then you suddenly
Mm-hmm.
switch it around. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just not to give any spoilers, but I found myself uh, recanting like my own assumptions about where the episode was going each time round during season two.
Wonderful. As with a lot of great comedy, oftentimes the best punchlines are the ones you don't see. And I think season 2 delivered a lot of predictable and unpredictable punchlines. What do you think about it, Isa?
I was a bit worried going into season 2, right? Like I thought
Mm-hmm.
season 1 was pretty solid, and I was wondering, like, just because it's so low stakes, and
Yep.
just because it's a very easy watch. I mean, the humor's not for everyone, and that's understandable. But I wasn't sure how they would continue that in a way that made sense, right? Like it needed to have some sort of progression, while at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, maintaining all the things that the fans love. So I wasn't too sure, but I mean, I have to say, like at the end of the day, despite a few portions where it felt a bit messy, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of the storytelling, like overall, it's still a riot, right? Like there are plenty
Mm.
of arcs I think this season which I found hilarious. I do like the fact that we've gotten a fair bit more character development from characters that weren't as well developed last season.
Yep.
Guillermo being one of them.
Yeah.
And that particular storyline was really good. I think like I would continue to watch it just to see where Guillermo ends up. Other than that, I don't really have that many complaints. About this.
Mm.
It was a very easy watch. It was very lighthearted. It continued to give us more information and build a bit more of the world out for us, or rather the neighborhood out for us.
Yep.
And it has some pretty it poses some interesting questions about vampire law.
Mm.
Especially about the ghost episode was particularly funny for me. Um,
Mm. Yeah,
yeah, so I
that's
mean,
interesting.
like it delivered more of the same. I feel I don't think that they added that much to it, and I have no complaints about that.
Mm.
But I'm also again curious, going into like a season 3. If there's a season 3, I heard that Jermaine Clement left the show. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So now I mean, like Taika's not there,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jermaine's not there. I'm not really sure if they'll continue in the kind of same vein that they have been with this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where it goes. Overall, I did enjoy it a great deal. Yeah.
Yeah. You were saying something earlier, Chris. What did you want to point out?
For I wanted to kind of point out like the different uh, monsters that they had, like
Mm.
in terms of like the expansion of the world.
Yeah.
I mean beyond uh, werewolves from last season.
From the
This
movie, actually. Yeah.
yeah from the movie. And no, they were also in season 1.
They were also in season 1, yeah,
Yeah,
but they begin in the movie. But they introduced a whole lot of other supernatural creatures this season.
yeah. I was just surprised. Like even Babadook made an appearance during the show. That was
Yeah.
just so left field. Like I had to do a double take.
Yeah. Amazingly, like actually, the I guess the overarching story of season 2 is Guillermo finding out at the end of season 1 that he was descended from legendary vampire hunter Van Helsing.
Yep.
And he's kind of torn between his devotion to Nandor and his unmistakable talent for slaying vampires.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a smart way to shake up the basic low stakes structure of it, even as Nandor for most of the season remains oblivious to Guillermo's power
Mm,
amidst his usual idiocy. And I
hmm.
think the actor that plays Guillermo, Javi Guillen, does a really good job of playing the inner turmoil and the comedy bits. It feels a bit like The Office, where you're working for an incompetent boss, that kind of thing.
Oh my god!
Uh,
Every time he stares at the camera, I just want to. I feel his pain.
I know. We've all worked for bosses like that, and we've all felt underappreciated in the workplace. This is just a bit heightened because he works for a vampire, and he knows that the promise of being turned into an immortal is sort of an empty one. I think that's really great. Some of my favorite episodes this season were the Superb Owl Party that
Oh.
was also
Oh,
also a Super Bowl party. But I think my favorite of all was the one where Mark Hamill guest starred in.
mm.
I thought that was really brilliant because it introduced Laszlo's alter ego of a regular human bartender, Jackie Daytona. And
Jackie Daytona.
then it sort of like swerved into randomly into how they were all super invested in this local varsity volleyball girls team and how they needed to make state. And that was one of the more unpredictable punchlines because like I had no idea that this old vampire rivalry was going to go into this small town
Yeah.
comedy skit about a volleyball team. That was really funny.
Yeah, that was.
Uh, what were some of your favorite episodes of the season, Isa?
I think. Oh man, Colin's episode this season was great. It
Oh yeah,
really, really was. That was like there's some next level stuff. I didn't expect it. I mean, like I thought they would probably revisit something like that, right? But
hmm
just to see the extent of how powerful he can actually get when he's placed in the right place, it is pretty intense.
hmm
And like the whole idea of like his hair growing back and he's getting younger and all that, like it's kind of like a throwback to Dracula with that we actually reviewed some time ago,
Yep.
the BBC one. Yeah, and so I really, really enjoyed that. Superb Owl is definitely one of my favorites.
Mm.
Superb Owl was just like, oh my god.
The poor guy that they brainwashed. I still think about him.
What did they call it? Brain scramblies?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
brain scramble.
Like he had different levels for it. I had to like pause and then rewatch his explanation of the different levels
Uh,
of mine 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 top twisty curvy.
Yeah.
oh my god.
What about you, Chris? Did you have like standout episodes for you?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the episode when baby vampire learned how to be a vampire and learned her powers. Was that this season?
I think Baby Vampire was just introduced in last season, but it came back again this season.
Yeah. So
Yep.
that one stood out for me, and also Vampire Orgy.
Oh my god.
Vampire Orgy really stood out to me. I like Baby Vampire mainly because I saw the jealousy and Guillermo speaking out. Like that was the episode where he started speaking out a bit more against Nandor, like making
Yep.
known his discontent with his own position.
Yeah.
That really that's I really like that because it was so snarky, like and as well as Vampire Orgy.
Yeah, watching the vampires just being unable to get by without their familiars, like they didn't know how to do laundry, their house was a mess, etc. was really eye opening, and Guillermo's own descent into becoming a familiar for this other vampire who is not quite a vampire is
Yeah.
also quite funny as well. I thought the premises for this season was a bit more creative than previous seasons.
Uh-huh.
It was a bit wilder, but at the same time, it was still low stakes, which is kind of what I enjoy about it. It's a low stakes, high concept sitcom
Mhm.
that is very like unpretentious and has this kind of dry Kiwi humor that they maintained. Yeah, so overall, like I enjoyed it quite a bit, guys. Before you give your ratings, do you want to give your final thoughts? Let's kick it off with Chris.
Uh, final thoughts on what we do in the Shadow season 2. I
Yeah.
did, not to give any spoilers, but I was not very that much taken with the season finale.
Same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the last episode, I felt it was, first off, it was predictable.
Mhm.
Second of all, the ending didn't feel as big or celebrate, as in like as ornate as when the Vampire Council, we first got introduced to the Vampire Council in the second episode, right, for
Yep.
season 1. I
Yep.
thought it would be off that scale, but it wasn't.
Mhm.
For some reason, maybe they just chose a really small theater
Mhm.
for vampire theater. So yeah, that was my only gripe. Yeah.
What about you, Isa?
I mean, overall, I like I said, I don't really have that many complaints. There were just portions where some things work better than others. I think Chris is right in pointing out that the finale wasn't fantastic. There were quite a few laughs here and there, but outside of that, it was. I felt like they didn't stick the landing for the season.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Okay, so I guess like for me, I thought it was pretty good. It was a slight improvement over the first season,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, it was kind of inconsistent here and there. There were certain episodes that fell below the standard that I kind of expected. I thought the sperm stealing witches episode was pretty weak as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The season finale was okay, like it wasn't bad. It was just okay.
Yeah.
And also I be remiss if I didn't point out in the premiere a great guest spot by Haley Joel Osment, who was just the most annoying familiar, and I hated him so
Oh
much.
my god.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I totally forgot. He was a
I-
pretty big guest star.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Oh yeah. Completely forgot about him. My goodness.
I know, but what a fucking annoying familiar.
Yeah.
I hated him so much, and even when he came back as a zombie, he actually became more entertaining then. But yeah, how would you rate the season out of 10, Chris?
Out of 10, I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll give it a 7.5.
nice. What about you, Isa?
I'm gonna give it a 7 this season.
Okay, yes. I'll be rating it the same as Chris, 7.5 out of 10, which is actually the same as we rated it last season, so this is actually kind of a consistent show.
Oh,
Good
Yep.
ratings overall. It kind of ranges between a it's a high rating, like 7.5 or 7 out of 10. It's a pretty solid recommendation. We definitely recommend that if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have seen the movie and haven't seen a TV show like Chris, before I asked him to watch this is definitely recommended and well worth your time because it's such a low time investment. Every season requires maybe about 4 to 5 hours.
yep.
And it's easy to get through. It's breezy. You'll have fun with it. Maybe not the most mind blowing, structurally inventive comedy out there, but it is a really, really good comedy. Highly recommended season 2, What We Do in the Shadows. You can find it on FX. Next up, I want to talk about a super micro budget indie film called The Vast of Night. It's the debut film by director Andrew Patterson. I think it is a stunning, sweeping, vintage sci-fi film. It's set in the 1950s in New Mexico,
Mhm.
and it's kind of framed as an episode of a Twilight Zone-esque show. It's an intimate period piece that uses that era's history of UFO phenomena and Soviet paranoia to create this kind of riveting thriller unfolding in real time, essentially over the course of a high school basketball game. The movie follows a young radio DJ named Everett and a switchboard operator named Faye. As the night progresses, Faye and Everett's knowledge of tape recorders and recordings becomes significant when a strange noise begins appearing all over town, appearing as distortions on Faye's phone lines and on Everett's radio station. So Everett and Faye team up to figure out the origin of the mysterious sound. This is essentially the very bare basics premise of The Vast of Night, but the real beauty of the movie is in its execution, I think.
Mhm.
Chris, you had a chance to see this. What do you think about The Vast of Night?
I thought it was a very, very quaint period piece of
Mhm.
that particular era, and it was there in the dialogue, the choice of words, the
Mhm.
vernacular that they were using.
Mm.
Um, all of that kind of evoked this high school, small town back in the 70s. Is it 70s?
50s.
50s. Yeah.
Yep.
It that even with the switchboards and everything, I love it. It was just such a very easy nighttime watch for
Mm-hmm.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Isa?
For the amount of money they were given to make this show, it is a beautiful movie, right?
It's self-funded, actually. Like, they weren't given anything. They made it themselves.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
with the kind of budget that they had, right? Like it's
Mhm.
really well shot. The look and feel of it is it feels very like real, very authentic
Mhm.
for the timepiece itself. Like I think the costuming and the set design and all the kind of like old tech that they had available in that, like it looks very much like a period from a piece from that period. Um, I really think that Andrew Patterson has a lot of chops for someone who's doing this for the first time.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what he does next. I didn't like I went into this without finding out about the movie and all of that and reading anything else. So after I was done watching and I find out that it's his first time directing a feature length film,
Mhm.
and just kind of like some of the strange things they did to get the shots that they got
Mhm.
was really quite fascinating, as a like kind of just trivia after the fact, and quite taken by how tight most of the movie was, in
Mhm.
terms of its pacing. I mean, it's fairly dialogue heavy, and there isn't as much action as one would expect from uh, when someone tells you the kind of the premise of the story.
Yep.
But all of that feels very natural, and I think the two uh, main protagonists did a really, really good job. I can't remember their names at the moment.
Uh,
Sarah
Everett
McCormick
and
and
Faye.
Jake Horowitz. Yeah, like the two
Oh,
main
the
actors.
actors.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think they did a really,
Yeah.
really good job. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Andrew Patterson is kind of a maestro of the camera. He does a lot with absolutely nothing. There's barely any CG. There's
Yep.
barely any money in it. From long, slow, steady tracking shots following Everett and Faye as they kind of just walk and talk, to locked off, perfectly still single takes of just extremely long monologues that just close up on the actors' faces. The camera work has you on the edge of your seat, and it will mesmerize you.
Mm-hmm.
One scene in particular, a single tracking shot that happens in the middle of the film that goes on for I think 10 minutes as the camera races all over town, in and out of buildings, feels almost impossible. It is a ridiculous shot. I have no idea how they did it. They didn't use CG for that. Like I'm sure because it looks practical. Chris, we kind of talked about this shot yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
could you like speak a bit more about what you thought about that shot?
I think uh, when I was watching that, I was kind of there's no dolly, there are no
Mhm,
tracks. For an instance, I actually thought that the person who was shooting the shot was on a skateboard holding a camera with a weight in order to keep the shot steady. The way it traversed the whole entire place made the town feel much larger.
Mm-hmm.
Like
mhm,
you could sense the distance of which the characters were running to and fro, and even the scale. I think the scale was very important
mhm,
for an our sense of the scale of the town, because then it made sense why some particular where, let's say, where Faye was in terms at the switchboard, uh,
mhm,
it made sense that she seemed so isolated. That was actually the point in the movie when I was watching, where I felt a creeping sense of fear and suspense, because it
mhm.
was this young girl. It was the dead of the night. She just took on the shift, and she is encountering this sound over the switchboard, and people are dropping off in terms
Mhm.
of being able to be contacted. That really kind of increased the suspense for me at that point. That was quite memorable for me.
Yeah, yeah, same here. Isa, do you know which shot we're talking about?
Yeah, so I didn't. I was trying to figure out how they did it, so I went to do a bit of searching.
Mhm.
Did you guys read anything about it?
Nope.
Yes, I watched the making of. So yeah,
Right. Okay.
yeah,
So
they shot
I
it.
don't know if we watched the same making of clip. But
Mhm.
hit you want to like, uh, are we gonna tell people or should they just
No,
go?
no, no. Just preserve the mystery. Don't
Yeah. Yeah.
reveal the
Okay.
mission
Okay. Right.
secrets.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I found out, I was just like, really? Are you serious?
Mhm. Mhm.
But still, like to get a shot like that is still quite a feat. I have to say, it's quite something.
I know it's a what amazing craft in filmmaking.
Yeah.
At a certain point, like we talked about the camera work, sometimes the film does revert to a square black and white format to remind us that we're supposedly watching an episode of an anthology show called The Paradox Theatre. At other times, our leads are back in the studio and taking calls to discuss the strange sound, and the camera just cuts to black, relying entirely on voice acting,
Yeah.
which kind of harkens back to the radio drama roots of the movie's inspiration, which is War of the Worlds. I think War of the Worlds
Mm-mm-mm.
is the big inspiration point for the mood of this film.
Uh huh.
The radio station they work for is called WOTW. I think it's a explicit
Yeah.
reference to War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, dynamic camera work, amazing dialogue, wonderful acting that kind of drives the tension of the film. And I think that the two leads they kind of carry the movie with their
Mm.
50s personas, desperately running around trying to figure out things. And
Actually, Everett was very charming in this film. He was
I
so
agree.
yeah,
charming,
Yeah.
even from the get go, from the first, from hearing how he kind of commanded like everybody in that basketball court
Yeah.
in the
mhm.
beginning. Yeah, very charming. The characterization is great.
I do agree. Isa, like, what do you think about the various different people that Everett and Faye went around town talking to? I thought like the different people and the different stories added maybe not plot elements but creepy elements to it. It added to the tension. Like the woman that they talked to at the end, for example, like
Yep.
gave me the chills. What do you think about all the various characters in the film?
It okay. It's fascinating that how it's part of the world building, right? Like you come across this town, right, and you get a gist of what the setting is like just before
Mm-hmm,
everything kind of happens, and then as they go around interviewing people in their cars, these families and these members of the town on Faye's little tape recorder, right? Like you
mm-hmm,
slowly kind of build up what the town's spirit is kind of like, and you on the one hand you kind of get to know the people, but on the other hand you also realize there's a lot of vacancy in that space, right? Like
Yep.
you're not quite sure, there's a town in New Mexico,
Mhm.
it's a kind of out in the boondocks and all of that, right? But and it's filled with people, but you're not really quite sure what kind of people. Like they seem a bit caricature-ish
Mhm.
for most of the time. And then of course as the different interviews go on, and when things eventually do happen, right, of course you have to interview with Billy, with
Mhm.
such a compelling voice acting, I have to say.
Mhm.
And then later on, their in-person interview with Mabel, which I have to say I felt went a tad longer than I wanted it to be. I kind of drifted, my attention kind of drifted in the middle of that, and then I had to like rewind and rewatch the whole thing.
Mhm.
But it plays into a lot of I think the kind of the conspiracies of the time, right, that is taking place in the 1950s,
Mhm.
with just before Area 51, and with UFO sightings and all these like secret military things that are going on and all the
Cold War stuff,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-mm.
And it spoke to that kind of era or movies that covered that particular era.
Mhm.
Is there something in particular that you felt added to the creepiness of the show in general in the interviews?
I think what was great about the show in general is what I like about Hitchcock, in that a lot of the stuff that they don't show.
Uh huh.
Like it's not CG heavy. They don't show scary aliens. They
Yeah.
don't show scary monsters. You just have this sense of disquiet, this sense of tenseness that just follows you around as you wonder what it could be.
Yeah.
And it's the wondering your imagination that it stokes. That it's really good filmmaking and harkens back to old radio dramas and old films.
Yeah.
And plus there's this kind of like sweet undercurrents of classical Americana
Uh huh.
about young characters and their young ambition and young love and hopes for the future. Yeah, those are the kind of stuff that I really liked about the
Yeah.
film. Before I guess we get to our ratings, do you have any like concluding thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the standout moments for me for the film was when Billy revealed that he was African American. That
Mm-hmm.
that all of the characters who ended up have going on these secret missions were all African American, and
Yep.
how their voice, and he said it quite. There was a, I think I'm misquoting him. Like he said, like we are the voices. Uh, you I need to speak up right now because you don't usually hear from us. And I thought that was so
Yes.
timely
Mm-hmm.
in that particular monologue that he had. And
Mm-hmm.
it then struck me that actually I didn't see any African American actors in the film.
It is an accurate representation of the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was it kind of it kind of pushed made me jump back a bit and kind of break my fourth wall, because I then started going like, okay, I'm too deep into the film. Let me come out of it again, because I think the Black Lives Matter movement
Mm-hmm.
uh, kind of has changed my lens in a manner.
Definitely. I mean, Black Lives Matter is, a lot of people might say it kind of stems from the 2014 killing of Eric Garner and then most recently George Floyd, of course. But Black Lives Matter to Black people has been around for 400 years. It's been around in the 1800s, in the 1950s during Jim Crow, to now. So it's always been prevalent to them, and it's important to have their voices heard in this time period and what it was like for them. I think kind of the undercurrent of the film also is about insignificant people who are irrevocably changed by big things beyond our comprehension, like whether they're black or whether they're female.
Mhm.
No one's ever bothered to listen to them before, and
Mm-hmm.
what Faye and Everett is doing is actually listening to their stories and giving them weight.
Yeah.
What about you, Isa? Do you have like concluding thoughts?
Uh, okay. So I watched the majority of this movie with my headphones on.
Oh, okay.
And I have to say that the quality of the sound just throughout the film, right, in terms of the sound design, when they're talking on the radio, when they're talking in people, or even like the fidelity of the actual recordings themselves that they're digging through, is
Hmm.
really good. Right, it
Oh.
really sounds like tape. It really sounds like radio. At least on my headphones, right? And I didn't expect that. And I
Hmm.
was quite surprised by it. And I think like what was interesting is that when they finally get the the tapes from the library, right? And they're
Yes.
Yeah.
listening to that, and he goes like, "Oh, it's even clearer." And I was just like, "Is it really clearer? Isn't it just the same thing?" So I go
Yeah.
back, right, and then I listen to the original one that's through the telephone, that
Hmm.
Faye picks up, and then I listen to the one that he plays through the radio through Faye's thing, and they're different. Like they actually sound different. And it's because of the medium that they're kind of going through, right? The fact that it's routed through the telephone and then routed through the radio, and then you can actually get the tape thing where the characters themselves are listening to it, which is the highest form of fidelity that they're going to get at that point in time. And
Yep.
it kind of shocked me just how much like attention that isn't something that people are really going to pay attention to, you know. And the
Hmm.
only reason I gave it any sort of attention, it was because I could kind of tell on my headphones. I was just like, oh wait a minute. So that just caught me by surprise, and I appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like a
Uh,
short aside.
any other concluding thoughts before you give your rating?
No. I think it's a good movie. All in all, I have to say for a self-funded thing,
Mm-hmm.
and just like for first outing for Andrew Patterson, I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed it. I did at the end of it, I did feel come away feeling like I wanted more. But again, you know, you got to remind yourself that it's framed as an episode of Paradox Theater. So I'm looking forward to see what Andrew Patterson does again. And like honestly, if Paradox Theater was a series, I would watch it like
Oh,
easily for sure.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
definitely, yeah. I think it's impressive to see such storytelling finesse, sophisticated camera work, and filmmaking prowess, and experimental narrative, and great sound design, come from a newcomer
Yeah.
essentially. And to have all this kind of ambitious gambits mostly work is on an independent film budget, no less, is quite a feat. Which is why I kind of am impressed with this movie a lot. Like I do agree that I think the ending was kind of a letdown a bit,
Yep.
but it doesn't really matter to me lah, because like you said, it is framed as an episode of a Twilight Zone esque show, and it does end in the same way that many Twilight Zone esque
Yeah.
episodes end. So I get what they were going for, and given the constraints that they were given, wonderful stuff. I think I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. What about you, Chris?
Um, 8. Same.
Nice,
Yep.
nice.
It's an 8 for me too. The same.
That's awesome. Of course, The Vast of Night is available right now on Amazon Prime. If you have a subscription, go ahead. If not, you can also rent it. I think for $3, very cheap. Do try to give Andrew Patterson your money. He deserves it, and so he can make
Absolutely.
bigger budget films in the
Yeah.
future.
Yep, yep.
I think that's it for Chris's portion of this episode. Thanks again for coming on, Chris.
Thank you for inviting me. I love the stuff you always recommend.
No problem. We will have you back in the coming months, for sure. Okay. You follow Dark Matter Theatrics on social media on Facebook if you haven't. Chris is a playwright on that, and I guess as soon as the COVID thing is over, they'll be up and running once again.
Yep.
Uh, awesome, Chris. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
guys so much. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye bye. We will be talking about Legends of Tomorrow now. And if you're wondering why our introduction song was Cisco Stong song, you must not have you must not have seen the season finale of the Legends of Tomorrow. So I would not spoil too much about it to you. But let's just say like early 2000s R&B legend Cisco plays a big part in the finale
Oh yeah.
randomly.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there any show in the world having more fun with itself than Legends of Tomorrow right now? I say none. For the last, I think, 4 to 5 years, Legends has kind of pound for pound been the most joyous slice of what the fuckery in this or any timeline. And this season picks up from Arrowverse's Big Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover. The
Yep.
Legends immediately jump back into their own time travel problems when Astra releases the souls of history's most notorious villains from Hell, from Rasputin to Bugsy Siegel to Genghis Khan to even Damien Dark. The Legends are forced to jump around the timeline to re-kill all of these reanimated villains. Plus, Mick has a daughter because he went back in time and had sex with his high school sweetheart. Nora is a fairy godmother. Ray leaves the team to marry her, and there's so much more. And that's just kind of from the first half of the season.
Yeah.
And the second half kind of switches to a different story where it revolves around Charlie, who turns out to be one of the fates from ancient Greek mythology, and she's hidden the loom of fate from her sisters in order to give humanity agency over their destiny. Man, what a fun, wild, really audaciously inventive season of Legends Tomorrow. Once
It's
again,
crazy how much they packed into this season.
yeah.
I don't think we've ever gotten this many kind of arcs in a single season of Legends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just like I watching through the entire season, and I pretty much did it in one sitting, more or less.
Yep.
It was a bit. It felt like it could have gotten a bit much, but it was so fun overall that I didn't really care.
Yeah, 100%. I think that like the most important thing to keep in mind is that it is a comedy show and it is genuinely hilarious. When it wants to be, it can also be very heartfelt.
Yep.
In addition to being lighthearted, I think of all the Arrowverse shows, Legends Tomorrow can be silly and self-referential without getting lost in the snarkiness that say like Deadpool is, right, which
Yep.
attempts comedy as well. From its incredible like mockumentary premiere episode where we see Rasputin is kind of a reality TV whore, to a whole action set piece of Genghis Khan and his army trying to take over Hong Kong with kick scooters. It's and the episode was wonderfully titled Mortal Kombat, by the way. There is Ava's amazingly drunk karaoke of That Girl
Yeah.
Is Poison from 1930s Chicago. The episode where William Shakespeare turned Romeo and Juliet into a superhero epic called Romeo versus Juliet: The Dawn of Justice. Um, yeah, there's even like a sweet story that kind of redeems Damien Dark by putting him inside a Mr. Rogers episode.
Yeah.
Or how about Cisco once again performing Tong Song as the soundtrack to the season's climactic battle. This show has like too many great moments to rank or to list, and I'm just
Yeah.
like listing them of the top of my head, and they're all pure joy. They can do anything. They had even a crossover with Supernatural.
Yeah.
There is a alternate influencer version of Zari who is just so fucking funny. I think Tala Ash absolutely kills it in her new role. By the way, she is so hilarious
Yeah.
as influencer Zari. Like what do you think about all the different threads of the season and how fun it was?
Uh, it's okay. So there's a lot going on, right? I think like we've come to expect a lot of what goes on from the legends itself. So it wasn't messy
Yeah.
in a lot of ways that shows of that ilk can kind of get messy, right?
Mm.
I think like we followed the main kind of like core cast of these guys for a while now. I am a bit sad to lose Raymond. Um,
Mm.
and that was some really like solid like emotional notes that they hit there, and I love it whenever they kind of like dip out of the comedy,
Yep.
just to kind of evaluate some of the more human connections in the show itself. uh but it was a lot, it was such a strange ride, and it's kind of difficult to see how they would probably like top that with any more,
Mm-hmm.
you know um but yeah, I had a lot of fun. I think like being able to kind of like tie up a couple of loose ends. I think like having John Constantine on as he has been for the last two seasons
Mm-hmm.
is a joy, right? Like he brings to the table that something that Legends didn't have prior to that, like with the cynicism and the quick witticisms that he throws around all the time.
Yeah.
His relationship with Astra, and just how he's a lot more somber, I guess, than the rest of the cast in general.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that Sarah has kind of like found her place as captain,
Mm.
and she realizes, I think, in a very meta sort of way, that this is the way things work, right? Like you constantly find her explaining how the legends work to
Yep.
to Ava, who's new, right? And just kind of at her wits end as to what to do most of the time, and just like just let it be, it'll work out and all of that. And I love that, like she's kind of gone from like having to replace Rip, and like just coming to her own as captain, and then now she's just kind of like whatever, we'll deal with it. And even like later on when she gets like foresight and all of that, like it all kind of plays into like a great sort of character arc over the seasons, um that I really do quite enjoy seeing, the kind of like friendships that they have and all of that. For me, having multiple versions of Zari is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think especially in the tail end when you get to see like how different the characters she has to play,
Hmm.
are, and how they have to interact with each other. I was just like, oh, damn, like Ghost got some chops. The Shakespeare episode was a particular standout one for me, just to have them doing Romeo and Juliet, like proper, iambic pentameter and all of that, and delivering those lines in. And these are great actors, like having the time of their lives, and that's how it feels like um throughout the entire season, especially this one.
Yeah, I mean, like the show is frequently lighthearted. They take almost nothing seriously, but when the show wants you to feel something and get serious, you definitely feel it. From Ray and Nora's wedding, to
Yeah.
Nate's sadness that his BFF Ray is leaving the team, to Sarah and Ava's romance, to Mick and his daughter, to the two Zaris, to even a new character in Behrad and his life and death,
Yeah.
and the beats that are meant to kick you harder because we've had so much fun with all of them, and
Yeah.
and Legends is kind of like at the point where the writers are willing to try every ludicrous idea that crosses their mind, and and they kind of manage to make everything land, which is kind of a miracle in of itself.
Yeah.
And
It,
hell,
it
even in the finale, they did. I think they did Westworld season 3 better than Westworld did, with the
mhm.
Loom of Fate inspiring a much more fun take on the whole free will versus chaos debate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like it was so many things kind of at one time, right? When we hit into that arc, when they finally come back, with the Watchers and all of that, it was like Westworld meets Black Mirror,
Hmm.
with the Legends like just doing their own kind of take, silly take on it. Oh, I loved it. It was really really solid.
Yeah, man. Of all the episodes this season, I think the episode that stands out for me, the highlights, is where the Fates have created an Orwellian 1984-esque future where free will
Yep.
is gone and the legends are stuck in a various TV universes, which gives them a great opportunity to do spot-on parodies of Friends, Downton Abbey, Star Trek the original series, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood once again, and it was a blast and kind of just as awesome as last season's Legends of Tu Meow episode. Um, Brilliant stuff. I mean, I think one of the few people who are actually big fans of all three shows that they kind of parody: Friends, Downton Abbey, and Star Trek. And
Mhm.
I kind of noticed a lot of that they nailed a lot of the Downton Abbeyisms and the Star Trek original seriesisms. Like they knew those shows,
Yeah.
and the parodies were really great. Like, what do you think about the episode? And do you have your own highlight?
Oh, wow, there's just so many.
Mm.
Damn. I mean, I really enjoyed that episode. I think it was a very kind of clever way to get around the whole big question, right? Like just the episode before, you're not really sure. You're at the point in time whereby you know that the season isn't up yet, but they've lost to the fates,
Yep.
and you kind of question like how is Clotho just gonna kind of like finagle her way through this, and it ends up being a bit of a compromise on her part, I think.
Hmm.
But it's a very inventive way of going about it for sure. I think just like Mona and Gary, trying to like bust them out of this like whole TV universe thing is pretty hilarious. And I mean the Friends, from I don't watch Downton Abbey, so I can't speak to that.
Hmm.
Right, the Friends one and Star Trip. Oh man, I love those. I especially love Mick as
Khan.
Yes, it's so funny. Yeah, it really just and the fact that Clotho at the end of the day said, "I gave you everything you wanted," right?
Hmm.
When they were sitting around, they were discussing the things that they wanted.
Yep.
And she delivers all of that. I didn't expect her to deliver them in the form of these three particular shows. That being said, I don't know per se if Astra actually gets a happy childhood, because we don't see any of that.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, definitely is one of the standout episodes just because of how bold it is, I think.
Hmm.
In the way that they're kind of telling stuff. The outside of the TV universe, the entire kind of Orwellian dystopia that the characters find themselves in, or at least Mona and Gary find themselves in, is fascinating, I think. To kind of work that kind of imagery of a dystopia and to tie it to something that is very fundamentally Greek myth, right? A
Yeah.
very fundamental kind of Greek myth is kind of mind blowing,
Yeah.
And the fact that, at the end of the day, if you are a voice of dissent, even in the slightest, right, you can get your thread cut, which is insane. Like I never thought I would ever see those two things merged into
Mhm.
a single kind of like entity. And it's crazy how a show like Legends, that I think the majority of people who have come across it, or maybe follow it just casually,
Mhm.
um you
Are
would dismiss
confused.
something of that. It's pretty high concept, right?
Yeah.
um to come across a show like Legends, and I love it. I love it because of that. Like, even despite the fact that it's silly, it's funny, and they just lean into it so much of the time. There's some very genuine human moments, and there are these moments where just the concepts that they're playing around with is pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. One of my favorites actually, like outside of that one, also is when they travel to Hudson University, and they battle the Greek god Dionysus in a
Oh,
frat versus sorority contest. And that was pretty intensely funny, and
yeah.
it was so ridiculous, especially with Nate just falling head over heels over Dionysus,
Yeah.
and everything, even down to the beer pong finale where Sarah uses her powers to beat him. It's insane. I even like the formation of the sorority and the little video that they did.
Yeah.
It's kind of just like this small encapsulation of what I love about Legends.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they don't forget the fact that, despite the fact they're going out, okay, that for me was just how, like, the sorority was meant to be a place for outcasts, and the Legends have always been,
Mm.
right? Like, from the very very beginning when Rip forms them, right? It's all about the fact that no one is gonna miss you,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. They,
For
they
that,
never
and
they never fit into their own shows.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then for them to kind of bring that all the way into like this college, uh college scene, and form a story around that idea of having those rejects. I think, like, it felt good, right? Just to kind of see them follow through with that,
Hmm.
all the way to something that, very honestly, if they didn't do it, I would have been, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
But the fact that they've been so consistent on delivering this kind of thread all the way from season one until now, I gotta give it to the writers, man.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't know how they come up with this shit. Yeah.
100%. In terms of like, do you have any like final thoughts before you give your rating?
Uh, I had a wild ride. I don't know if they can keep the density that they've done this season.
Yeah.
That's just kind of my main thing, because there's so many times I just like, is the season done yet? No, it's not done yet. I still got like 5 episodes left.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I'm not sure if that's something that they can do consistently, and I hope they do.
Mm.
Just because, like, they are the only kind of like DC franchise right now that's delivering anything. Well, no, there's Harley Quinn as well, but like
Yeah.
that's like a completely different thing.
Different
Um,
universe. Yeah.
yeah. So for live action DC stuff, right
Yeah.
now, that's the best that we're getting, and I hope they continue to keep it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a show that I treasure a lot, and I think the reason they're throwing everything at the wall is the kind of constant threat of cancellation, being the
Yeah.
most low-rated Arrowverse show. So like every season is, could this be it? Could this be it? Let's throw as many ideas as possible at the wall and see if it sticks. Thankfully, all of them do,
Yeah.
as ludicrous as they are, and that's why I kind of treasure the show. It's the underdog that I root for all the time. I think
Yeah.
it's a 8.5 out of 10 season for me.
Oh yeah, it's a 8 out of 10 for me for sure.
Nice. Right at the end of Legends of Tomorrow, Sarah gets kidnapped by aliens, abducted, which I think it's gonna tie all the way back to season one, episode one, where the very reason that Rip recruits the team is because in the future there will be an alien invasion by the Tenagarians, which has never happened yet.
Yeah.
It's something that they introduced in the pilot episode that they've never paid off, and I think they're gonna pay it off next season.
Oh wow. Damn. That didn't occur to me at all. That
Yeah.
didn't occur to me at all. Sure. Let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, like, yeah. So is Rip definitively gone? Probably, maybe.
Probably, or maybe he might come back for this Tanagarian threat, since that is the entire reason that the Legends was formed.
Yeah.
Considering Rip was saying in the future the world ends by a Tanagarian invasion,
Yeah.
the show never actually showed us that. They
Yep.
just went off on different random things. And now we're back to the season one thread that they kind of promised and they're going to fulfill. I think it's a great idea if the next season is indeed the final season.
Yeah, that would be interesting for them to just kind of tie everything up. It's been such a ride, you
Hmm.
know, just overall, and all the places they've been, and all the people they've met, and all the different things they've screwed up along the way.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Oh
but
man.
in the most fun way possible. The only live action show that I can kind of like semi compare to it is kind of Doom Patrol.
Mm,
In that vein, but I think Legends has just done it for longer and more consistently. That's why
yep.
I really love the show, and I think it's the best live action superhero show out there right now. But switching from live action to animated, let's talk about the second season of Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, which burst onto the scene earlier this year. Actually, we did a review.
Yeah.
The animated series delivered, some action-packed adventures and some truly supportive friend and familial relationships, and one of the most bumping soundtracks we've heard since Spider
Oh
Verse.
man. Yeah.
We were like a pretty solid. We solidly enjoyed the first season. We were fans, and I'm kind of happy to say that in season two, those highlights continue with another batch of hypercolor, hyperactive episodes.
Yep.
And if in case you haven't seen Kipo, let me just like give you a little quick reminder about what it is. It is set in a vibrant future where humans live in underground cities and animals have gained sentience, grown in size, and taken over the surface. We follow a lost girl who falls in love with the strange world of giant bugs and talking cats, and following the season one finale, apparently her father and her community have been kidnapped, and season two kind of follows her journey to rescue them. I have seen season two as well, and SS Isa. What do you think about season two? Does it live up to the potential of season one?
Yeah, I think it definitely does. Like we got a fair bit of like world building and character development in season one. A lot of that gets paid off in season two.
Mm.
And the willingness to go at depth to for some of the characters is pretty fascinating. Like Scarlemagne and the whole Hugo storyline that we go through.
Hmm.
Like I really kind of enjoyed that. Like for them to it could have been very easy to play him off as just a villain, right? But we end up being a bit more sympathetic towards his cause, and there are a few about faces here and there, uh, and like it really just it it I think they stuck it, for season two. I did feel like season one they could have done a fair bit more, but I can see like how it's led up to what they did in season two. On the music side of things, I have to say, like the music is consistently amazing,
Hmm.
right? The cheese
The cheese,
song,
the goat song is
the
like still
goat
still in my
song
head. Yeah,
is a banger. Like
yeah,
I would do a remix on that. I would play at a club just because like
yeah.
it's so it is so good. And the props to the guys who are doing music for
Mm.
this series, because like so many of it is original stuff, and it's like it's there's got a lot of solid bops, and it's always right tonally, and they use it very very well within the context of the story.
Yeah. I think season two kind of has kind of the same creative freedom to explore quote unquote taboo topics in children's animation, which isn't taboo
Yep.
anymore. Like
Yep.
burgeoning same-sex relationships in a
Uh-huh.
very positive manner.
Agreed.
Season two is a bit different from season one in a sense that it is a bit more linear, in that we kind
Yeah.
of understand what the Kipo world is already, so there aren't as many surprises in that sense. Like the world is no longer this, oh wow, what a wonderful world. Like I'm firmly entrenched in the world. I know what it is. So in
Yep.
that sense, it's a bit more predictable, in a way that I'm more familiar with it. But that's not
Mm.
to say that the episodes are boring.
No.
They're great new takes on goat societies, otters, crayfish, and even fungus. Um, I think anytime all the introductory setup is done and you get into it, season two is when a lot of shows in season two you kind of struggle to keep things fresh. But I
Yep.
think Kipo does that really well. It does keep it fresh with new characters, plots, changing
Yeah.
allegiances, and some returning familiar faces. Yeah, I think it unveils the Kipo mythology quite well, and also
Yep.
doubles down on its social commentary in terms of the mutes versus humans conflict as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, yeah. I don't think After seeing season one, I didn't expect it to go where it's gone right now.
Mm.
Like there is a fair bit of like social issues that they're trying to like talk about and all of that above and beyond you what you would expect from a kind of like dystopian setting that season one set up.
Mm.
Yeah. Um all in all, I really did enjoy
Same, yeah.
season two. Yeah, I'm curious to see where they go. I really am. Like I'm looking forward to season three. If they're gonna continue to give us like fairly interesting twists and turns,
Hmm.
introducing like a whole new slate of characters, some pretty late into the game as well,
Hmm.
with surprising results. I want to see how this plays out. And yeah, I'm gonna watch just for the music, man. Like seriously.
I agree. It's a really solid kids cartoon. The cast, I think, does a fantastic job of bringing the colorful characters to life, and they're even better when they're all singing along. The
Yeah.
music really does heighten the fun and the vibrant scenes.
Yep.
I think it is like perhaps still not at the level of say Adventure Time or Steven
Nope.
Universe or
No.
Infinity Train or later era Shira. But it has the potential to get there someday because I think even Shira at this point in time, we kind of didn't see
Yeah.
yeah that
Yeah.
potential yet, but it can get there one day lah. So I think
Yeah.
for season two, really solid, just solid, but like not great.
Yeah. I mean, like it's not. Yeah, it hasn't reached the point of being like kind of transcendent as we spoke about like later era Shira or even like Steven Universe was from the very start,
Mhm.
right? But plenty of potential there, more so than I had gave Shira credit for in the first two seasons.
Yeah,
So yeah, let's see where this goes.
it's a 7 out of 10 for me. What about you?
It's a 7 out of 10 for me too.
Nice. Yeah, solid. Pretty solid recommendation. I think you should definitely be keeping up with Kipo because I think it's gonna end up in the future in season 3, 4, 5, however long it goes to be a special show. Has
Yep.
all the raw ingredients for it, lah, I would say.
Yep.
Next up,
Definitely.
we'll dive into a little section called Quick Hits where I talk about the various shows and films and all of that that my co-host hasn't had time to see or maybe has seen a bit. If you have seen a bit of it, feel free to jump in on any of these topics.
Hmm.
First of all, I want to talk about the spin-off to Penny Dreadful. It's called Penny Dreadful City of Angels.
Uh-huh.
Penny Dreadful. Have you ever seen the original show, Penny Dreadful?
Yes, I followed most of it. In fact, I think I only dropped off at the last
The
season.
third season. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this time Penny Dreadful goes from the gothic monsters of 19th century Victorian London to kind of the
Uh-huh.
glamour and horror of 1930s Los Angeles. Hence, City of Angels, its subtitle. It's essentially a supernatural spin on California noir, and creator
Hmm.
John Logan has found a new setting and palette to explore Penny Dreadful's favorite themes, in particular the demonization of other. Um,
Yeah.
this new story stars Natalie Dormer as a shape-shifting demon, an agent of chaos named Magda, who is intent on bringing out humanity's worst instincts. She's a
Hmm.
temptress in many forms, whispering in ears. She offers humans the dreams that will ultimately cause their ruin. But although Magda is kind of the centerpiece of the story and gives Natalie Dormer ample opportunity to display her range in a variety of characters, the main character is actually a guy named Diego Vega, who is LAPD's first Latino detective.
Oh.
He doesn't just face racism within the force, he's also caught between the racial divide of his people and the institution he has chosen to represent.
Okay.
Not only that, on his very first day on the job, he's assigned to a grisly, ritualistic murder of a rich white family from Beverly Hills. They appear to have been murdered in sacrifice to a Mexican god of death called Santa Muerte, who is
Hmm.
actually Magda's sister, the demon sister in this canon. All of this is connected to the construction of something called the Arroyo Seco Parkway. It is a new highway that will cut
Hmm.
through and bulldoze Mexican American neighborhoods, destroying their homes and businesses. This sparks kind of an all-out race war in LA at the timeline in the 1930s, and that's
Hmm.
kind of just the tip of the iceberg. The story is quite vast and it's sprawling. It's a labyrinth that weaves the infiltration of Nazis into the city's social and political fabric,
Wow.
which was quite real. It happened in the 1930s.
Uh-huh.
There is political corruption and espionage on that end. We're also introduced to a German doctor who is fond of America but has sympathies for the homeland. He is played
Yeah.
by Rory Kinnear, who also played Frankenstein's monster in the original Penny Dreadful. It's the same actor,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
different character, of course. There is a strange cult-like megachurch that sells God via radio evangelism. So that plays a big factor as well. There is the Jewish mafia. There is even a subplot involving a suave Latino gang that feels straight out of West Side Story. So there's all this very disparate elements that come together. That is quite representative of the time period, lah, though.
Uh-huh.
It's very similar to the many threads that is parent show weaved, and much
Yep.
like the OG Penny Dreadful, the show isn't plot driven per se. It's all just stable setting for more character centric stories and mood pieces that feel like tone poems. Um,
Uh-huh.
Visually, the show is stunning. The period detail, ranging from the sets to the costuming, is lush and immersive. It's a gorgeous show. But where the show succeeds the most is by once again using supernatural horror to uncover sociopolitical horror within a human metropolis. It's a story about human frailty displayed through capitalism, fascism, and racism. Magda the demon didn't invent or direct any of these things. She just
Yep.
kind of brought out your true colors, or the character's true colors. Lah.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, I can see how many new to the Penny Dreadful style will be kind of frustrated by the slowish nature of the show if you're not familiar with its vibe,
Yeah.
and the kind of the slipshod manner in which the plot is executed. But if you know the original show, it's not very plot centric, it's not very story centric, it's just very style centric and mood centric.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that does drag it down a bit, unlike the OG Penny Dreadful, there
Yep.
is no one on this show that kind of possesses the superhuman acting ability of Evergreen.
Evergreen. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
because
about to ask that. Yeah. Okay.
Evergreen was kind of the force of nature that elevated Penny Dreadful and its kind of like meandering tone poems, like
Yep.
it made it feel real and visceral just for the sheer force of her acting.
Yep.
And while City of Angels is full of competent actors, like good actors, Nancy Dormer is fine in it, everyone's fine. It just feels like I don't know how to describe. It's like a team of Scottie Pippens lacking Michael Jordan.
Oh man. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the best metaphor I can think of. So overall, I enjoyed it a lot, but not quite on the level of Penny Dreadful because Evergreen is in there. So it's a 7 out of 10.
Oh, okay. Cool. So it's still worth a catch.
Oh yeah, still worth a watch. Definitely. It's just like sometimes I miss the scenery chewing of Evergreen being possessed.
And that one, does Natalie Dormer have that? Evergreen has one episode every season of Penny Dreadful where she just goes insane.
Uh,
Like
in
like
in
the
a sense,
seance one and seance.
in a sense, not really, because
Okay.
Natalie Dormer plays a villain here, so they don't really focus
Yep.
too much on her. She's more
I
like
see.
the devil whispering in everyone else's ear.
Right.
There are great individual episodes for the protagonists or the various protagonists that they introduced, but
Okay.
nothing so much for Natalie Dormer lah.
All right. Cool.
All right. Next up, I'll be talking about Adventure Time: Distant Lands.
Hmm.
This is happens. It's 3 years after its beautiful, emotional, open-ended series finale. One of the greatest animated shows of all time. It
Yeah.
returns for a series. Well, not a series. A mini series of 4-hour-long episodes entitled Distant Lands. The 4 episodes are spaced out as quarterly installments. So
Oh.
every 3 months there'll be a new 1 hour episode, which is kind of
Okay.
a big deal because the show, much like Steven Universe, is 10-minute episodes. So having a
Yep.
having a 60-minute episode is very long. So they
Uh-huh.
need time to produce it, so that's why it's spaced out every 3 months. The first one though,
Mhm.
it focuses on everyone's favorite adorable handheld video game console Beemo, as he travels beyond Wu to embark on a space adventure to save an alien world on the brink of destruction. Beemo, he wears his sheriff's hat. He goes on a bizarre quest to help the citizens of said planet, which is actually a giant space station. Along the way, we meet another protagonist by the name of Y4, who is kind of a rabbit humanoid who becomes close to Beemo and risks being estranged from his people by following Beemo wherever it goes. Much like the series, the special disarms you with quirky joyfulness and vibrant color, and then like bam, hits you with dark undertones and wrenching emotional moments. And it's all done on a grander scale with the longer time frame, 60 minutes, as I mentioned.
Yep.
The show hasn't lost what made this special hasn't lost what the show was like, or what made the show so endearing.
Uh-huh.
The oddity of Bemo's linguistic style is still very charming, as well as the overall mix of lighthearted adventure and adult themes. Made for a very entertaining special. And the only downside is that the emotional beats this time
Yeah.
focus on new characters.
Huh.
So, the new alien characters that we meet on Bemo's
Yep.
adventure. So
Yep.
it's kind of their story, and Bemo is our proxy into their world. So
I
my
see.
emotional investment in the climax isn't the same as it would be if it focused on regular characters like Finn or Jake or Marceline or Princess Bubblegum. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a great story, but for characters I don't kind of care about yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good story, and it ties into Adventure Time's surprisingly complicated mythology in surprising ways. Adventure
Okay.
Time has like one of the biggest, most convoluted mythologies I've seen,
Yeah.
and this kind of adds one of the missing pieces into it, so it's quite nice.
Interesting. Okay.
Otherwise, it's a wonderful, solid return for Adventure Time. It's a 7.5 out of 10 for me.
Oh, okay.
I-
Is every special, all of the four, is every special going to be standalone?
Every
Or are
special
they
is standalone, and it takes place in different timelines in a
I
sense that,
see.
like, spoiler alert in 3, 2, 1. Apparently, this special takes place as a prequel to Adventure Time. Because
Ah,
we see Bimo landing on Earth and meeting Finn and Jake for the first time.
right.
It was wise of them to not
Y-
tell us that this was a prequel, because it gave
Yep.
us stakes for Bimo. We didn't know whether Bimo was going to die or not. There were
Yeah.
several moments where Bimo was, on the brink of destruction, and if it
Yeah.
was revealed it was a prequel, like, it takes out the tension out of it. So very
Ah.
nicely done.
Okay.
In the following months, though, Distant Lands were written with I think the next one is called Obsidian. It stars
Mm-hmm.
Marceline and Princess Bubblegum on a mission
Oh,
to save
nice.
the Glass Kingdom. And then there is a prequel story about Peppermint Butler, and then the finale next year will be a Finn and Jake reunion called Together Again.
Oh,
So yeah, nice, and I'm very happy to have the show back in my life.
sweet. Cool.
It's on HBO Max, by the way, if you guys want to catch it. The hot new streaming service out right now. Next up, I want to talk about Promare, which is the first feature film from Japan's Studio Trigger, which is kind of best known for Kill la Kill and Gurren Lagann.
Mm-hmm.
And it's directed by the studio's co-founder Hiroyuki Imaishi. And boy, this anime is like it's like injecting a shot of frantic energy and intense color into my eyeballs. Um, Promare is a insanely hyperkinetic anime. It's set 30 years after a mysterious mutation causes humans to spontaneously combust, creating a disastrous global fire known as the Great World Blaze that extinguished most of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
From the ashes, the city of Promopolis rose as a new sustainable society ruled by the seemingly benevolent Governor Cray Forsyth is installed. The remaining citizens, though, are still affected by the destructive power, which allows them to wield fire. The small minority of mutants are called the Burnish and are considered criminals for merely existing.
Mm-hmm.
So they are persecuted by a fascist law enforcement agency called the Freezer Force, and these marginalized people turn to a fringe terrorist cell called the Mad Burnish, who are an insurgent group targeting the system to free their incarcerated fellow Burnish. So at first it kind of starts like this, X-Men tale.
Yep.
Where mutants are persecuted, but later on there is a deeper conspiracy. Apparently, the presence of the Burnish is causing Earth's magma to heat up, and the planet will be doomed in 6 months because the Earth's core will explode. To avoid this, the villain's governor Cray Forsyth has actually been rounding up innocent Burnish because he plans to use their power to
Uh-huh.
fuel a warp engine that he invented. So he's going to use them as a fuel source. He's built a giant spaceship for himself and a few elite citizens that will send them to another planet in an effort to
Yeah.
survive the coming Armageddon. So there are more details involving a space-time rupture, a parallel universe inhabited by aliens and AI. There's an AI that lives in the Earth's core, by the way, and other things like that surface as explanations. But I have to be honest, right? I really, really stopped paying attention to the story because it doesn't matter
Yeah.
as much as the animation does, because it's so insane and eye-popping and utterly bewildering. If if you choose to watch it in Japanese and don't read the subtitles at all, I guarantee you'll still be entertained. But you'll be
Yeah.
confused, but you'll be entertained. Like Promare is a visual feast. It's so hyperactively imaginative. There's fiery duels and giant mechas, everything you expect from traditional, big scale anime. The film is nearly 2 hours long, but it passes by in what feels like 20 minutes. It's a wildly entertaining and dazzlingly stylish anime. I guarantee you the final mecha fight will be the most epic mecha fight you've ever seen. There is no shortage of bravura action sequences that are just ridiculously dazzling. On the flip side, though, the energy feels a bit kind of like overcompensation for a half-baked story.
Yeah.
It could have been a lot more. That being said, I think Promare is best enjoyed if you don't think about it too deeply and just enjoy the view. So it's a 6.5 out of 10 for me.
Nice,
Have
nice.
you seen Promare, brother?
Okay, so I when it came out,
Yeah,
right? I turned it on for 10 minutes and
yeah,
I decided that at that moment in time I couldn't take the kind of visual assault that it is. Not
yeah,
to say
yeah,
that it isn't beautiful,
yeah.
right? I'm familiar with the stuff that Trigger puts out, and I love Kill la Kill, I love Gurren Lagann, like those, especially Kill la Kill. I think took me by surprise, right?
Hmm.
Especially like the way that the story ended up being great,
Yep.
from something that was just insanely bizarre. So I was kind of hype about it, but like really like just the first 10 minutes alone, right? I was just like, okay, I don't think I'm in the right headspace
Yeah.
to deal with this right now. Like it's a lot. It's overwhelmingly a lot. And that's coming from someone who watches a ton of anime.
Hmm.
So I stopped at 10-minute mark and I didn't pick it up again. It's good to know that like they keep up that kind. It's gorgeous. It really is in its own way.
Mm.
Right? It's like it's a frenzy, kind of like fever dream from what I can tell.
Mm.
But there were, even in the first few 10 minutes, they were just like, you could screen cap any one of those things and you could frame it up as a work of art. Very honestly.
Oh, 100%. It is.
Yeah.
This whole movie is an epilepsy warning.
Yeah, exactly. So like as much as I was curious and hyped, I at that point in time I just couldn't. So I will give it a try again at some point in time. It
Hmm.
just felt like a lot at that point in time. So it is good to hear that it's worth watch.
Yeah, yeah, it's not great or anything, but just like enjoy the view, lah. Like I mentioned. It's now available on Amazon Prime. It just popped up recently. I know it's been available in Japan like last year in 2019, but
Yep.
it recently became available worldwide for free if you're
They did
subscribed.
fairly well actually in Japan. I think when they debuted, they were eighth in Japan for a good few months.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
pretty big, pretty big. I mean, it's
yeah.
not like your name or anything, but
No, no, no.
it's a great outing, lah.
Yeah, I mean, like especially, I mean, Trigger does have its own cult following because they've done Gurren Lagann and because they've done Kill la
Kill Kill.
Kill.
Yeah.
Yeah, which has become a cult classic. So I'm not at all surprised, but damn, for an animated movie in Japan, that's still very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, I'm going to be talking about the return of Harley Quinn in season
Hmm.
two. Harley Quinn, much like Doom Patrol, is now on HBO Max. They've kind of like subsumed the DC Universe titles.
Yep.
So if you listen to our review of the animated Harley Quinn show back in January, you know that I think me and Hardy think the world of the show, and I was very happy to see the second season return so quickly, so soon.
Hmm.
Season 2 is set after the climax of Harley Quinn's gloriously funny first season, where Gotham is in ruins, Batman is missing, the Justice League are stuck in a book, Joker is presumed dead, and now finally free from her toxic ex, Harley and her crew revel in the chaos of a lawless city, but to her displeasure, she finds that Gotham's remaining supervillains have divided up the city into personal kingdoms, restoring a
Hmm.
kind of order, an evil authoritarian order, but it's still some semblance of order. And
Yep.
this season is mostly concerned with Harley going around murdering the other villains to kind of restore her favorite anarchy.
Yep.
It is an interesting twist on a famous Batman story called No Man's Land, if you call it
Hmm.
the comics, just told from the point of view of Harley Quinn. Sometimes she's out to kill Penguin and Mr. Freeze, and sometimes she finds frenemies like Catwoman, and other times she's trying to wrap her head around Poison Ivy and Kite Man's weird but really affecting romance, really sweet
Yeah.
romance. And that romance is actually kind of the heart of the season, especially when, as we all knew it would, Ivy and Harley start developing feelings for each other. So it's a great dynamic. Uh, One thing I did not expect, like I've always wanted when the show premiered, and you knew that
Yep.
Harley and Ivy were the main characters.
Uh-huh.
You kind of always knew they were gonna get together. That was the end game. It was Jim and Pam. It was Ross
Yep.
and Rachel. They have to get together. That's what the fans want. what the show does magnificently is, right, getting us so invested in Kite Man that when it happens, you almost wish it doesn't. Like Kite Man is
Damn.
such a ridiculously stupid character,
Yeah.
but then
I
like
mean,
you start to feel for him, and you start to feel bad for him that like Ivy is cheating on him. That you are
yeah.
almost like, oh man, I kind of wish that Ivy and Kite Man stuck together. Like that's great writing.
Yeah. Okay, man, of all people.
Yeah,
Shit.
he got me so
Okay.
invested in Kite Man, and besides that, it continues to be a very profane, hyper violent, filthy, ultra hilarious show. But the key is that Harley Quinn never gets too dragged down in the Deadpoolisms because it has
Uh-huh.
heart. It's surprisingly heartfelt when it comes
Okay.
to Harley's found family. You know, like you are invested emotionally in all the characters. You know, there
Uh-huh.
yeah, there is a hint of Deadpool 2 in this season where the tone and comedy at times don't quite play as well because the novelty factor has worn off.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong, it's still a delight. It's just a bit of diminishing returns.
Right, right.
But it kind of doesn't matter as long as the emotional core is there. As long as
Uh-huh.
you're invested in character, the show is doing something well. So while it was a 9 out of 10 for me last season,
Yeah.
season 2 is an 8 out of 10. Slightly down, but
Yeah.
still 8 out of 10 is still a
It's
very
very high. Yeah.
healthy recommendation. Yeah.
Nice,
Uh,
nice, nice.
yeah, do catch up on Harley Quinn season 2 if you haven't seen it. Really, really loved it. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the third and final season of Dark. This German TV series has kind of become a sensation around the world. Even in the age of like great German TV like Babylon Berlin and Deutschland 83, Dark has kind of become the country's weirdly most popular export thanks to Netflix.
Yeah.
So Dark, we are recording this on the 27th on a Saturday, 27th of June. Dark premiered today at noon, so I spent the last 8 hours,
Oh
literally like
God,
noon
hits.
to 8, just finishing the season. So it was a struggle. Not in a sense that like I didn't enjoy it, but like it was a brain power struggle. Like, there's a lot to keep track of, you know,
Yeah.
as you know, lah. Um, Dark may have begun as a show about the disappearance of a young boy in a fictional small town called Winden and all the strange occurrences that happened there. So it kind of drew early comparisons to Stranger Things. But
Uh-huh.
as it unfolds, the show offers a much bigger and more complicated story about a family drama and a contemporary Greek tragedy with a lot of biblical and mythological references wrapped up in this uh, enigmatic, mind-boggling time travel saga. Um, there are a lot of moving pieces throughout each season, and the storylines take place within so many different time frames and timelines that untangling them would require days or even weeks. So I'm not gonna try to lay out like what has
Mhm.
happened in the first two
Yeah.
seasons,
Yeah.
but I will say that is the complexity that is what make the complexity is what makes Dark frustrating and so addictive. It
Mm.
pulls you into the show to solve a labyrinth of drama and time hopping mystery, and it does so in the most airtight fashion. Like there are zero plot holes in this, you know, and I've been thinking about this a lot about Dark, and there are. Have you seen Predestination by any chance?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is like if there were 24, like at my last count, 25, 24 to 26 different predestination paradoxes happening to different people that are interlocked. Like, so, you know,
Yeah.
it's brain melting. It's a brain melting. Like everyone's family trees and futures are interlocked, and it's so tightly plotted that I kind of shudder to think of the mind mapping that goes on in
Oh
the
God.
in the
Yeah.
writer's room. Lah. And much like the first two seasons, the third and final season ups the ante once again in terms of complex
Oh my
plotting
goodness. Yeah.
because right after at the end of season 2 in the finale, Jonas gets a visit from Alt Martha from an alternate universe,
Mm-hmm.
and season 3 finds Jonas trying to stop the apocalypse in not one but two different universes. It's at this moment where the show introduces us to different versions of his characters, some of which were also thrown into a different timeline at the end of last season. There's a female version of Jonas called Ava now, who controls most of the chess pieces in, I'm gonna call it Earth 2 in Earth 2.
Okay.
So if you think like the six timelines in one universe in season 2 were confusing, uh,
Oh.
get this. This new season has two universes spanning 300 years. So 300 years of different timelines with
Uh-huh.
multiple realities inside each universe, depending on what decisions they make. So
Oh my
yes,
God.
this sounds like a lot, the story will get pretty confusing in the first half of the season, especially with so many uh, scientific mumbo jumbo, quantum entanglement, this paradox, that, etc., etc.
Yep.
Uh, but it always kind of manages to fit the pieces together by the end, and all it requires really is if you pay attention, you can follow it. It's not
Right.
rocket science. If you pay attention, you can follow it. It's not hard to follow actually, which is hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this season does require a lot of brain power, but there's a certain satisfaction and addictiveness to the puzzle solving nature of the show.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out the relationships, characters, timelines, who is whose aunt, who is whose father, is your son this other guy's father, etc. And then like is this guy's father from Earth 1 or Earth 2, etc. And this season like amps it up to the nth degree,
Oh
but like
goodness.
it's elaborate but the pieces fit, and that's kind of the genius of the show. uh
Yeah.
on the flip side, if the characters felt paper thin in the first two seasons, like they were chess pieces, they feel even more like plot devices here,
Mm-hmm.
because it's difficult to engage emotionally with the romance and drama and trauma and tragedy when the characters themselves have no autonomy, and,
Yeah.
none of them and the choices they make matter, because they're all predestination paradoxes.
Yep.
There is a way to make it emotionally fulfilling. Like I last year, I just saw Watchmen infuse a lot of feeling and emotion into
Mm-hmm.
Doctor Manhattan in a much smaller scale version of a story like this.
Yeah.
In A God Walks to A-Bar. Unfortunately, Dark doesn't succeed as well emotionally. The
Uh-huh.
show is all brains and no heart, but for what it's worth, it's still pretty entertaining once the overarching mystery starts tying together. So there's a satisfaction in solving it, lah. Um, I don't know how to. This is a weird metaphor. It's like watching a world champion BJJ specialist compete in modern MMA. Like it's so good at this one thing, you watch the nuance and complexity of that one thing, it's beautiful,
Yep. Yep.
but then when it enters into different thing, like it doesn't know how to strike, it doesn't know how to use
Yeah.
footwork, it's just so ugly at other parts. So I don't it's hard to judge as a show, like it's not a complete fighter, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But what it does so well is so good that I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, so I still recommend.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
I still remember making spreadsheets for season 1 and season 2.
Oh
So
man, season 1 only had 3 timelines in
yeah,
one universe.
yeah, and I just like, wait, what? So I sat down after watching it the first time. I sat down. I was like, okay, I need to map this out, and
Yeah.
I kind of did that for most of season 2 as well, until things started falling into place. I was like, okay, sure. But this is crazy. I don't know how you did it in one go. Seriously.
It was tough. I had to, the rewind 10-second button
Yeah.
like all the time to like to fully like let it sink in, like what is happening. This Earth 1, Earth 2, like Earth 1 in 1888 and Earth 2 in 2054. Wait, which timeline is this? That kind of thing.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
That
this
sounds crazy.
yeah. Anyways, do it if you enjoy Dark. You will certainly enjoy. This is Dark at its most darkest. If you know what I mean. This is peak Dark. If you enjoy Dark, you will love this season. Next up, I'm going to be talking about Artemis Fowl. It just premiered on Disney
Ah,
Plus because COVID-19, as you know, has kind of shut down theaters around the world. So it's kind of being released on Disney Plus on streaming.
mhm,
It is based on a really popular, acclaimed YA fantasy novel series by Irish author Eowyn Colfer.
mhm,
Artemis Fowl follows its title character, who is a young criminal prodigy who hunts down a secret society of fairies to find his missing father. Under Kenneth Branagh's direction, this character now is just a really insipid, bratty, self-involved heir. And the
yeah,
only interesting thing about this irritatingly smug and cheaply campy adaptation is how uninterested it is in its own source material.
yeah.
It is kind of bland and incoherent with a paper thin character development, unimaginative world building, and worst of all, it bears little or no resemblance to the book. So I think give this a pass. It's a 1 out of 10 for me.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
kind of sad. I was a big fan of the series as when I was younger.
I mean,
Uh,
like the books are always there for you. If you haven't read or seen Artemis Fowl, I recommend you read the books, but give
yeah.
the movie a pass because this is terrible. One of the worst movies I've seen this year,
Is
definitely.
it Bragno?
Yeah,
It is, right.
yeah.
I mean, like he's not been doing well. What was the last one he did that I really couldn't
Murder
stand?
on Orient Express.
Oh my god. No. So no, yeah. It is him. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So not great. His last decent, not even good movie. His last decent movie was Thor, actually. The first Thor.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did okay with that. I was more excited about it. I mean, okay, I was a much bigger fan of Kenneth Branagh now when he was doing his Shakespeare and stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like Branagh as Hamlet, which he also directed, was great. Like I
Mm.
really enjoyed that. Oh, but man, like I was a bit disappointed with how he did Thor. I thought he would make it a bit more grand and all of that, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
And then Murder on Orient Express was just horrible,
Oh
with a
yes.
stellar cast, mind you.
Also.
Uh, Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Quite
Oh,
unfortunate. So yeah, don't watch Artemis Fowl at all.
okay.
Next up, I'm gonna be talking about the latest addition to the CW Arrowverse. Based on it's called Stargo.
Uh huh.
And just based on the lackluster trailers, I was not expecting to enjoy Stargo. But to my surprise, I actually found Stargo to be kind of fun. It
Yeah.
is far from great. There is something about its brightness that feels refreshing. The show
Okay.
almost feels like it was. It doesn't throw back to the 70s or 80s. It feels like it was legitimately made in the 1970s in terms of
Interesting.
tone and style. It's light and extremely family friendly. Like your 5 year olds, when you watch your old Saturday morning cartoons from the 80s, it feels like that.
Uh
Um,
huh.
so think of it as Justice Society in high school, and you kind of get the idea. Um,
Right.
the character of Courtney Whitmore is an intensely personal one to its creator Jeff Johns, who modeled the character on his younger sister, who unfortunately passed away in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's important to know that why this character was created, and she was
Yep.
always supposed to be a literal shining beacon of positivity in the darkest times. If
Mm-hmm.
you kind of understand what this character is supposed to be, then you kind of forgive its corny and cheesy elements.
Yeah.
It's a solid superhero show for kids, but maybe not adults. So it's a
Huh.
5 out of 10 for me.
Interesting. So, I mean, given that it's made for kids, how does it sit within the Arrowverse?
Mm, I think the Arrowverse is wide and diverse enough because
Uh
this
huh.
doesn't take place on Earth Prime in Arrowverse. It takes place on a different Earth.
I see. Okay. Cool. All
Yeah,
right. All right.
yeah. Next up we have a new comedy on. Man, I forgot what this was on. I think it was on Hulu. Yes, a new comedy on Hulu called Crossing Swords. It's an animated stop motion comedy
Uh huh.
series. It's created by the people behind Robot Chicken. It follows Patrick, who is a good-hearted peasant who lands a coveted squire position in a royal castle. His
Yep.
dream job quickly turns into a nightmare when he learns that his beloved kingdom is run by a hornet's nest of horny monarchs and crooks and charlatans. Even worse, Patrick's valor has made him the black sheep of his family, and now
Mm-hmm.
his criminal siblings have returned to make his life hell. Um, on the plus side, there is a lot of remarkable detail to the stop motion characters in this Hulu series. It's kind of the careful, handcrafted style you expect from studios like Leica or Artman.
Mm-hmm.
It's all, but unfortunately, it's all in service of incredibly dumb, lowbrow jokes, propping up
Oh
a,
man.
a, a thin story full of one-dimensional characters. The sketch comedy structure of Robot Chicken kind of allows the creators to deliver quick hit jokes. Like
Yeah.
each sketch in Robot Chicken is like 30 seconds, 1 minute. When you stretch it out to a half-hour show, it
Uh huh.
becomes old really quick. It's just the same fart jokes and penis jokes over and over and over again. Yeah, it quickly exhausts the humor potential and is left with a repetitive joke structure. So it's a 3 out of 10 for me. Do not watch this. Highly disrecommend.
Oh man.
Oh
Oh
man.
well.
Oh well. Next up, I'm going to talk about Black Quantum, which is an indie movie that hit Shudder, which is a horror streaming service. It's a pretty
Mm-hmm.
pretty typical zombie movie, except for one big difference. It's set on a First Nation reserve, which is
Mm-hmm.
Native Americans, but it's not Native Americans, and indigenous people in Canada. They're called First Nations. It's set in a First Nation reserve and it's told from the POV of indigenous people. It's basically a one-man movie. It's written, directed, edited, composed, casted, everything costumed by a guy called Jeff Barnaby,
Mm-hmm.
who was born in a First Nations reserve in Quebec. So the premise offers a fresh twist on the zombie apocalypse genre in that only non-indigenous people can be
Yep.
affected by the undead virus. So
Huh.
indigenous people are immune to it.
Okay.
So of course the zombies still pose a threat because they can kill you,
Uh-huh.
but the indigenous people can be turned lah. The title itself, Blood Quantum, it refers to laws introduced in the 1930s to determine whether to kind of define a person's Native American identity and ancestry based on genetics lah. And our main characters are the indigenous people on the reserve. And deep into the zombie outbreak, every white character has either succumbed to the virus or is begging for shelter in the makeshift fortress of native land.
Mm-hmm.
And the metaphor of Barnaby's script is very clear. It's a comment on colonialism, with white settlers bringing disease along with a general sense of greediness and false ownership over indigenous land. And it's a great addition to kind of the long legacy of social allegory in zombie films.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely race centric because it reminds you that humans will always turn on other humans when things get desperate, regardless of what race you are.
Yeah.
So some of the indigenous characters are heroic, some are not. But beyond showing us a variety of people who all react differently when the apocalypse strikes, the movie gives us insight into a community that's already endured plenty of hardship. Even before the zombies arrived. So this is kind of nothing new for them. It's just
Oh.
another genocide. So it has all the hallmarks of a satisfying zombie movie.
Mm-hmm.
The action is gruesome. It's creative with a lot of severed heads, crawling torsos, operatic sprays of blood all over the place. The only downside is like beyond its great metaphor, it's a pretty standard zombie movie. Like it's a competent one, but you kind
Yeah.
of seen all the beats have been done before lah. So it's a 6 out of 10. Like great metaphor, but as a movie, it's just okay.
All right.
Yep. I think that's it for quick hits for
Mm.
this month. Of all the stuff that I talked about, is there like anything that caught your ear that you want to watch?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely gonna give Primari another shot for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I might catch Penny Dreadful. I think I'm
Okay.
definitely gonna. I'm definitely gonna catch up on Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely gonna catch up on Adventure Time. For
Nice.
sure. Yeah, I think that's basically those are the ones. I'm definitely not touching Artemis Fowl. Sounds
No.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds pretty bad as well. I'm not sure about Stargo. Like outside of Legends, I haven't really been keeping up with anything from the Arrowverse.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of the crossovers that we get every year, but yeah, that sounds about
Nice,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Harley Quinn is probably the one that is most worth watching lah of the bunch lah.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Cool. I will definitely be checking that out. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I'm going to queue that up on my list of things to watch.
Nice. And finally, before we leave, we have
Mm-hmm.
our poll list. This is where we recommend reading material for you guys. And for this month, I'll be recommending a title or graphic novel called Notes on a Case of Melancholia or A
Mm.
Little Death. I'm sure you all remember the Perry Bible Fellowship. It's a very famous and morbidly funny comic strip that kind of debuted on the internet. It's kind of one of the OG web comics.
Yep.
It debuted in 2001. uh, its writer and author, Nicholas Gurewitch, is back with a longer form graphic novel called Notes on a Case of Melancholia, as I mentioned. The graphic novel features the Grim Reaper himself as we follow Death trying to kill an old man but isn't having much luck. Death
Mm.
is off his game lately and he's been depressed due to family issues. Luckily, the man he failed to kill is a psychoanalyst and wants to help. The old man himself is a widower, so he's no stranger to death or depression. As it turns out, Death has a child who should be taking up the family family business,
Yeah.
but isn't. For example, Daddy Death instructs its child to reap a bunny, but Little Death instead offers it a flower. The child leaves the scythe on the ground and runs around with little animals. This all leads to a hilariously morbid twist at the end that will remind you of Perry Bible Fellowship's most fucked up stories, but I'm not going to reveal what it is.
Uh-huh.
But even before then, it's a darkly humorous and brilliantly illustrated tale. But despite this playfulness, Gurewitch's this whole book, right, is done in a black etching art style that feels very like substantial and somber. You see,
Mhm.
all the books illustrations are etched, like not with an ink or brush or a computer, but like painstakingly scratched onto pieces of clay with a pointy metal tool.
Mhm.
So Gurewitch actually he revealed that he hurt himself a lot when he made this book, because
Uh-huh.
the it strains your hands, and sometimes he cut himself. He had to go to a doctor and eventually into rehab, because doing the books caused a stress injury to his hands, which is why it took so long to make. But the result is worth it because the etchings create this dense physical images that demand thoughtful study. On every page, there are thickets of tiny hatches that slow down your eye and force you to contemplate compositions, details, and themes, which is important because this book has no dialogue. It is all done via the whole story is told just visually. There are no word bubbles or thought balloons or anything. Every part of the story is expressed through art, and
Uh-huh.
coming in at 48 pages total. This may seem like a light book, but the etchings will kind of make you stare at the book for ages as you kind of try to see the compositions and metaphor and various things that Nicholas Gurewitch is trying to do. Um, Highly recommended. It's an 8 out of 10 for me.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I ordered this on Amazon, so you can probably buy it at your local bookstore if it is open. If not, you can just order it online lah. As a side note, I just realized actually when I was writing this up that I actually know Nicholas Gurwich's brother, Dan
Oh,
Gur.
really?
Yeah, this guy called Dan Gurwitch, who is his brother. In the early
Uh-huh.
2000s, like me and my ex were big fans of College Humor, if you remember the website.
Yep.
And Dan Gurwitch was one of the hit writers. So we
Oh.
became friends on Tumblr. And then he mentioned he was taking a vacation to Singapore, so I ended up taking him around town. So I still have it on my Facebook, and we still kind of keep in touch. But his brother is also super busy now because he is the hit writer for Last Week Tonight with John Oliver for the past five
Oh.
years. So this is a
Yep.
very funny family lah. Both brothers are incredibly brilliant. Yep.
Oh my god.
Man, and yeah, just a quick little side note. Yeah, that's it for the 31st episode of Genre Equality. Next month is probably going to be the shortest episode in history because we only have two main topics. Japan Sings 2020 is a highly anticipated anime coming on Netflix, which I think we
Yep.
both will review for a main
Mhm.
topic. And otherwise, there is the Sandman audiobook, which covers the first three chapters of Sandman that's coming out. So we'll review that too as a main topic. I think it's one of the first audiobooks we've ever reviewed as a main topic. And
Yeah.
other than that, it's all quick hits, man.
Oh wow.
Like
Okay.
quick hits, I'm going to be covering Snowpiercer, Twilight Zone, Brave New World, The Old Guard, Central Park, Warrior Nun, A Whisker Away, and other things. But there really isn't any big titles out next month except for Japan Sings and Sandman. So we could get that done in half an hour or like 45 minutes, I think.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see. Things might pop up. I might jump on this. I might jump on the Snowpiercer because I've got a couple of episodes in already.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. I,
So
I,
we'll see
I
how it goes.
actually don't have. I've seen the first four and then I stopped, but I don't want
Ah.
to continue already lah. But I have my thoughts already. If you go further than that, then
Mm.
maybe you can tell me whether the show gets better or worse from there lah.
Yeah, I'll see. I'm 3 episodes in and I stopped. So, hmm. Okay. We'll see how it goes. We'll see
We'll
how it
see how
goes.
it goes lah.
We won't make any promises.
Next
Yeah.
one. But I am kind of psyched for Sandman. I think the voice cast looks amazing.
Yep.
Did you see the cast list that Gaiman put up?
Yeah, I did. I mean, like, anything Gaiman does seems to draw like a fair bit of like good people to it.
Mm.
So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
I'm I'm
But
curious
do
to
you?
see. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, like, do we know what the release schedule is going to be like for the other episodes?
Not sure. They've only announced for this year. They've only announced July 15th. The first collecting the first three chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Which is Preludes and Nocturnes, The Doll's House, and I think Fables and Reflections. Will
Right.
be compiled into one audio drama book, lah. And I'm interested to see how. Because I've heard a lot of audiobooks that just basically read out prose books.
Yeah.
This is a comic book,
Yep.
It's different, like how they're going to describe settings, backgrounds, and things like that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. Let's
Yeah.
we'll see where
And
it goes.
And on the plus side, also, Audible offers a free 13-month trial, 30-day trial, a 1 month trial. So if you are too cheap, you can actually listen to Sandman for free when it comes out on July 15th on Audible. And of course, Japan Sings is on Netflix. I'm psyched for that as well.
Yep.
Yep. Till next time, this has been Hidzir.
I'm Maisa.
Goodbye, guys.
Ciao.